Widow Wong had just slipped into the sorghum field. She had barely snapped off 2 broken stalks when someone suddenly grabbed the back of her collar. "So now you're stealing from me?" The voice was low, rough, and heavy. It belonged to Zhou Guanggun. The sound alone made her whole body freeze. Her hand went limp, and the sorghum fell to the ground with a soft thud. She spun around and tried to run, but Zhou's hand clamped onto her clothes like iron. No matter how hard she struggled, she couldn't get free. Running where? Either you pay for it, or you come with me to the village chief. Widow Wong's face turned purple with shame. Through clenched teeth, she whispered, "I don't have any money." Her husband had died 4 years earlier, leaving her alone with their 5-year-old son, Xiao Lei. The two of them had been barely surviving ever since. The grain jar at home had been empty for days. Her little boy cried from hunger every night. She had no choice. That was the only reason she had worked up the courage to sneak into the field and break off a few leftover sorghum heads. Zhou Guanggun was 40 years old. He was honest, hardworking, and kind-hearted. Whenever someone in the village needed help, he was always the first to lend a hand. But he was awkward with words, terrible at expressing himself, and had stayed single his whole life. It wasn't that Widow Wong had never noticed him. She had. But as a widow, she was terrified of gossip. So even if her heart had moved, she never dared step closer. Zhou stared at her for a long moment. Then he suddenly said, "If you don't have money, then pay off the debt another way. Come to my house and be my wife for 3 days. Then we'll call this even." Widow Wong's heart pounded. She looked into the distance where her hungry, pale little boy stood waiting. Then she bit her lip and nodded. Day 1. On the first day, Widow Wong went to Zhou Guanggun's house to cook. The moment she stepped inside, she frowned. The stove was greasy. Dirty dishes were piled up like a mountain. Filthy clothes were tossed into every corner. Dust covered the floor. She didn't say a word. She simply rolled up her sleeves and got to work. She swept the floor, wiped the table, washed the clothes, scrubbed the bowls. By the time she finally put porridge on the stove, half the morning had already passed. When Zhou came back from the fields and pushed open the door, he stopped in his tracks. The whole house was spotless. The smell of warm porridge drifted through the yard. He took one sip, scratched the back of his head, and said, "This tastes 10 times better than what I make." Widow Wong said nothing. She quietly set the bowls on the table. But in her heart, she could see it clearly. This man had been living alone for far too long, and he had been doing it in the loneliest, roughest way possible. Day 2. Early the next morning, just as Widow Wong was about to leave, she heard Xiao Lei crying from inside. She rushed back in and froze. The boy was burning with fever. His face was bright red. His lips were dry and cracked. He was barely conscious, mumbling nonsense in a daze. Her legs nearly gave out from fear. She grabbed him onto her back and ran toward the village clinic. But before she got far, she ran into Zhou Guanggun at the entrance of the village. What happened? One look at the child, and he knew something was wrong. Without hesitation, he lifted Xiao Lei onto his own back and rushed toward the clinic. The doctor said it was a severe flu. He needed medicine and an injection right away. But first, they had to pay. Widow Wong searched her whole body. All she had were a few tiny coins. Her eyes filled with tears. Zhou Guanggun didn't say a single word. He reached into his inner pocket and pulled out a small cloth bundle. Inside was nearly all the money he had saved over the past half year. He had originally been planning to buy a calf, but instead he placed the money on the table and said, "Treat the child first. I'll cover it." After the injection, Xiao Lei's fever slowly started to go down. Widow Wong watched Zhou running back and forth, taking care of everything. And for the first time in years, her heart felt both heavy and warm. Since her husband died, no one had ever protected the two of them like this. No one. The mountain accident, once Xiao Lei started feeling better, Widow Wong became determined to pay Zhou back. Someone in the village told her that wild hawthorn berries from the back mountain could be sold for money. So around noon, while no one was watching, she secretly climbed the mountain alone. The slope was steep. The path was slippery. She reached too far for a cluster of fruit near the top, and suddenly lost her footing. She tumbled straight into a dirt ditch below. Her ankles swelled up immediately. Every tiny movement sent sharp pain through her body. As the sky slowly darkened, she lay there alone, terrified. Then she started crying, not because of the pain, but because she was afraid that if something happened to her, there would be no one left to take care of her son. A few moments later, she heard footsteps above her. Widow Wang! Widow Wang! It was Zhou Guanggun. He was holding a torch, carefully sliding down the slope one step at a time until he crouched beside her. Why are you here? She looked at him in shock. He frowned and said, I knew it. You'd risk your life for money. If you needed help, you should have told me. You should never have come somewhere this dangerous. That was when she realized he had known all along how hard her life had been. Every night, he had secretly been leaving firewood, eggs, and white flour outside her door. And when he didn't see her all day, he guessed she had gone up the mountain. So he came looking for her. Carefully, gently, he lifted her onto his back and carried her down. Step by step, slow and steady. Lying against that broad, solid back, Widow Wang couldn't stop the tears from falling. For the first time in years, she didn't feel like she had to carry the whole world alone. The truth about the sorghum field. On the third day, Widow Wang limped back to Zhou Guanggun's house to continue repaying her debt. The moment she entered the yard, she saw him sorting through the hawthorn berries she had picked. He was carefully selecting them one by one, throwing away the rotten ones, keeping the good ones. How did you know where I hid them? She asked. Zhou's face immediately turned red. I bring things to your house every day. How could I not notice? Something stirred in Widow Wang's heart. Then that day in the sorghum field, you had already seen me before I started picking, didn't you? Zhou nodded. Even his ears turned red. Then why did you still grab me? She was half annoyed, half amused. He scratched his head and mumbled, If I hadn't grabbed you, would you really have come home with me? Widow Wang froze. In that instant, the truth hit her. She hadn't really been caught stealing that day. Zhou Guanggun had set the whole thing up on purpose. I saw you and the boy going hungry every day. I wanted to help, but I knew you were stubborn. I was afraid you wouldn't accept it. He lowered his head. Those sorghum heads, I left them there on purpose. They were the best ones. I wanted Xiaolei to have them. Then he pointed to the corner of the wall. The sorghum was still there, untouched, every grain intact. Widow Wang's nose stung, her eyes filled with tears again. Trouble comes to the door. Just then, footsteps sounded outside the yard. A local thug named Lai showed up with two other men and blocked the entrance. Ha, I knew you two were up to something. He sneered lazily and looked them over. Zhou Guanggun, if you want to marry her, fine. But first, pay back the debt her husband owed me years ago. He pulled out an old slip of paper and slapped it onto the stone table. 5 yuan. Been owed for years. Today, I want it back. Widow Wang's face turned pale. It was true. Before he died, her husband had owed money, but she had no way to repay it now. Zhou immediately stepped in front of her, shielding her with his body. I'll pay it. Just don't scare her and the child. Then he let out the only goat he owned. It was the most valuable thing he had. Take the goat first. I'll repay the rest little by little. Lai took the goat but still wasn't satisfied. Paying isn't enough. She should also. Before he could finish, Zhou's eyes flashed with anger. He slammed his fist into the wall so hard that his knuckles split open and bled. If you dare touch her, I'll fight you to the death. That was enough. Lai was so shaken that he backed off, cursing as he left. Only then did Widow Wang fully understand. This man might have been quiet and gentle most of the time, but when it came to protecting her, he would never back down. The promise her husband left behind. After the yard finally fell quiet again, Widow Wang softly asked, Why are you so good to me? Zhou Guanggun was silent for a long time. Then he said something that made her whole body tremble. The day before your husband died, he came to see me. Widow Wang looked up sharply. He told me if he was ever gone, he wanted me to look after you and Xiaolei. Zhou's voice dropped low. For the past 4 years, I repaired your roof, helped bring in your harvest, even chased away wild dogs from your yard at night. You just never knew it was me. Widow Wang broke down instantly. All those years, she thought she had been abandoned by the world. She thought she had been left alone. But her husband, even before he died, had quietly left her someone to lean on. At first, I was just keeping a promise. But later, I truly wanted to live this life with you. I wanted to be Xiaolei's father. I'm not good with words, and I don't have much money. Then, Zhou reached into his shirt and pulled out a tiny cloth pouch he had sewn himself. Inside were a few precious grains. These past 3 days have felt steadier than any year I've ever lived. If you're willing, stay. And for the rest of my life, I'll take care of you. And I'll take care of your son too. Widow Wong stared at his rough, calloused hands, at the man who had quietly protected her for 4 long years. And finally, she couldn't hold herself together anymore. She wiped away her tears, picked up the broom, and without saying a word, started sweeping the yard. Zhou stood there frozen for a long time. Then he stammered, "Yi, you. Does that mean yes?" With her back still turned to him, Widow Wong gave the softest little hum. And that was all the answer he needed. A new family. Not long after that, the two of them got married. There was no grand wedding, no fancy banquet. They simply invited a few close neighbors, cooked a few homemade dishes, and became a family. After the wedding, Zhou took over all the heavy field work. When he came home, he carried the child, fetched water, and chopped firewood. Widow Wong kept the house neat and warm. There was hot food at every meal, and light in the house every night. Xiaolei grew deeply attached to Zhou. Every day he followed him around, calling him dad with all the love in the world. Later, whenever they passed by that sorghum field, Widow Wong would smile and say, "That field was our matchmaker." And Zhou would laugh and reply, "Next year, let's plant even more. May our life grow strong and full, just like the sorghum." Once she had been a lonely widow with nowhere to turn, and he had been a quiet bachelor with no one to love. But now, under one roof, there were 2 adults and 1 child. If there was food, they shared it. If there was hardship, they carried it together. And no matter how bitter life became, there was finally sweetness in it too. Because real love is not always spoken out loud. Sometimes it's hidden in the hand that quietly reaches out to help. Sometimes it's hidden in the person who refuses to let go when life gets hard. When someone thinks of you, stands up for you, and keeps you in their heart, then even the hardest life can still become a beautiful one.